Hey, good Thursday evening, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here for a live weather impact on this Thursday, now July 9th. We've got another hot, humid day out there, but we are seeing some isolated storms. Not widespread. I think isolated is probably the term you're sick of hearing about. I know I am, but they've been isolated. Here's a look at our camera looking back towards uptown. You'll also notice our friendly neighborhood wasps are going crazy again on our cameras. So if you see some bugs, that's what those are. Isolated storms again tomorrow, almost a carbon copy, 3 days in a row. Exact same pattern, mid-90s. And then isolated storms. The weekend, though, some significant changes. We're going to see more scattered to maybe even widespread storms, possibly by Sunday. And then cooler conditions. I put a question mark because it's questionable how cool it's going to be. I'll show you why I think that in a second. Now, we do have some showers. My house finally got some rain. It wasn't a lot, but I was pretty excited because I know all the rain that's fallen earlier this week has hit a lot of areas in central Charlotte and up towards Cabarrus County. But for most areas south and north, it's been kind of hit or miss variety. And so finally, a little bit of rain. It's not a lot. You could see how that storm really started and back in York County and then kind of fell apart. I was going to track it, but it's kind of really fall apart. We can look at the cell that was up near Mooresville. That one has fallen apart as well. It was much more vigorous earlier. Let me delete the storm track because it's really not doing much. But we can loop this a couple of times, and you can see it was pretty strong as it moved over Mooresville. So you got a good little downpour before that completely exited the region. I'll widen this view out, and you could see how isolated these storms are. They are just not many of them out there. And even the wider view shows better storms to the south, some to the north. But really, for the most part, we have not seen a whole lot today. Now, we're technically in a low risk, but I have not seen anything remotely strong or severe. Tomorrow, again, most of our region in the lower risk for a damaging wind gust. That's certainly a possibility. I think Saturday more of a legit threat because we've got a front that I want to say it's a stalled front, but it's a slow mover drifting in from the north. This could kick off a stray shower or thunderstorm that's strong. So tomorrow's forecast looks a lot like today. Mid-90s, 30% chance of an isolated shower or storm. For the most part, they will be strong if they do get going, but there's not going to be many of them. It's that kind of setup where there's few, but the few that get going could be strong. And that's an indication at 4 o'clock tomorrow. You see some of those storms developing. That actually looks like a pretty decent chance near Gastonia, Shelby, Charlotte. I don't think they'll be in that exact spot, but the timing is that 4 to like 7 p.m. time frame. And then we go towards Friday night. Looks like another cluster of showers tries to develop. Saturday, little better chance of afternoon and evening storms, but look at Sunday. Sunday, got some pretty widespread showers and storms. That's why I'm somewhat optimistic we're going to get decent chances by Sunday. Now, the cool down is going to depend on the clouds and the rain. If we have full sun, it's going to be tough to be much cooler, but there are signs, at least for 2 days, Sunday and Monday, that we see a brief cool down. 5-day rainfall forecast shows a lot of rain around us, not necessarily over us, which feels like the story of the entire year so far with the drought. As we go through the next 5 days, you really see Saturday, Sunday stick out. Monday, a little bit. I have 50% chance. That's mainly because that could be in the morning. So if you think of Sunday night, Monday morning, that's probably going to be our best time frame. Now, cooler temperatures. Now, remember, this is all relative. It's relative to summer. The average high is 90. So if we're 88, that's technically below average. On Monday, mid-80s, boy, that would be really nice. 5 degrees below average, but there's always a but, right? There's always a caveat. By next week, same time, next Thursday, we're right back into the mid and the upper 90s. And that heat dome in the middle of the country really does look to crank up by the middle of the week, and we're going to be in that area of above normal temperatures, it looks like, from the 15th through the 19th. So just get ready. The heat is going to make a comeback. In fact, we've got a medium risk of extreme heat for most of the Carolinas for the 17th through the 23rd, and that's a sign of the hot air making a comeback. And I do think the end of the month is starting to look a little bit more toasty, with temperatures maybe mid to upper 90s with heat advisories and all that kind of stuff returning. So your weekend forecast, it is Thursday. It's never too early to look at the weekend forecast. You can see temperatures will be jumping back into the low 90s Saturday, but dropping into the upper 80s. Quick look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. Boy, that looks nice. We've got temperatures taking a little bit of a dip there, at least briefly into the 50s, and not the 50s, that would be great. The mid 80s, boy, I got really excited there for a second. Mid 80s would be great, but then next week you're going to see that temperatures start to go back up the other direction. We'll go 10 days into the future and kind of show you the whole 10-day forecast. You could see potentially upper 80s and 90s being the theme through the first start of the week, and then mid to upper 90s, maybe triple digits by the end of the week. So we're going to see the heat make a pretty significant comeback, and that's what we're seeing with that extreme heat kind of showing up in the long range. So potentially that would be coming back pretty strong as we go towards the end of next week and next weekend in particular. So roughly a week from today, that heat will be cranking back up. So it is Thursday, and you guys always know what Thursday is around here. It's drought day, and so let's give you a quick update on the drought. Alex and I and Rachel will be talking about this quite a bit. But when we look at the drought monitor today, it comes out. You can see, I'll back it up just so you can zoom in. It got a little worse. I don't want to say it was dramatically worse, but there certainly was more areas that trended back towards severe and extreme drought than we did just a week ago. And that's because the scattered storms just have not been widespread enough to cause significant impacts to the drought. In fact, the drought that we look at for 1 month to end it, the amount of rainfall, and it's not going to happen, by the way, the chance of this is like 0%. We need like 19 inches, guys. That's not going to happen. So this is just one of those things to tell you the drought is not going to end by August. It's probably not going to end in September. October, November, December, that'll be a different question. That's probably the first legitimate chances that we see of the drought coming to an end. Or let's hope not a big storm, but maybe a weak tropical system in August and September would be the only wild card I'd have to show you that we could see possibly. So we'll talk about the drought. We'll talk about what it's doing to Raleigh's water system, some big stories there. We got that tornado out of China to finally talk about. Rachel and Alex will join me coming up after the break in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So stick around and stay right there.
Weather Impact Live with Brad Panovich is sponsored by Moisture Lock, crawl space, basement, and foundation repair experts serving the Carolinas since 1988.
Tired of all this rain? Does your yard look like a swamp after it rains? Hi, I'm Greg Doggett with Moisture Lock, Charlotte's premier waterproofing and foundation repair company. The longer water sits, the softer soil will become. This can cause foundation issues. If you're having drainage issues, contact Moisture Lock. We'll get the water away from your home and out of your yard.
Moisture Lock, stabilize, enhance, protect.
Welcome back, everybody. Tim is off today, so we welcome in a recurring guest of ours, Alex Williams from WFMY, and you're going to see Rachel Mosshammer in the middle there, our intern, our super intern from Oklahoma. She's going to join us today as well, so all three of us on camera. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
Happy
It's
to
very
be here.
weird being a new face.
And we stuck you in the middle for that reason.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Alex, good to see you again. I want to talk first about the drought because we always do that on Thursday. And, I feel like a broken record. I know, Alex, you probably do too, but it's not going away. So we got to give this update every Thursday. And, it is interesting, Alex. We had this isolated storm chances this last week. I mean, a lot of folks saw some heavy rain. I know you guys saw some pockets, but there are far more areas that saw almost no rain. And I think that's one of the things we should really express to people who saw rain, because they think, oh, I got rain, so things are fine everywhere. It really isn't. And I think this week's drought monitor kind of reiterated that. It's not that it got super bad, Alex, but there certainly were noticeable changes in the wrong direction in more areas. It was subtle, but it certainly was a hint in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you can see that 6% exceptional. That includes portions of the Triad and stretches over towards the Research Triangle as well. And they've really seen kind of the brunt of the pop-up scattered shower thunderstorm as we've gone over the last couple of days. So they've seen a little bit of improvement if you look at the 1 week change. But again, like you said, Brad, a lot of places have now started to see an incremental change in the wrong direction. And a lot of people are like, it's rained over my house. Why is the drought not getting better? And it's because it's such heavy rain that's going to turn to runoff, and runoff doesn't soak into the ground as effectively. And so we need a good soaking rainfall in order to really help bring up some of those water levels that are in the ground tables.
Yeah, if you get under one of those downpours, thank goodness to those folks that got those. That does help your lawn and your short term, the very top of the soil, right? But I think the emphasis is how small and narrow it is, but also how short term the relief is. To really get out of this drought, we need, as you mentioned, Alex, a steady, consistent rain over a big area, because the water resources are really becoming an issue across our area. The lakes, the reservoirs, the streams are starting to really show some of the effects. And those are only replenished when we get widespread rain. And also, it's so hot, Alex, that we're using a lot of water. I mean, I think people forget this time of year, super high evaporation rates. All the plants are using water. People are filling pools. They're trying to cool themselves down. There's just a lot of water usage this time of year. So it's like a double whammy when it's hot and dry like this. And I think this graphic really is a great graphic. I'm glad we did the 1 month, which is impossible. That's not going to happen. 3 months seems like, okay, at least maybe in 3 months. But that's a daunting number, of Alex, to really get over. I mean, 25, 26, 24 inches, that almost seems improbable.
Yeah, and I mean, we're in the pop-up shower and thunderstorm season, so we typically see just isolated activity. What we need is a good tropical system to really bring a good soaking rain. Does that look possible? No. Saharan dust is really putting a damper on that. And then we need a good stalled out front, and that doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon either. And even as we get into the fall months, where we start getting more of those showers and thunderstorms coming through a little more widespread along those fronts, I mean, to get 2 feet of rainfall, that's a tall ask.
Yeah, and I'll bring Rachel in here, because Rachel, I mean, you found our story today. We were joking the last couple of days, and Alex just alluded to this. The Raleigh-Durham area seemed to be at a hot spot for the pop-up storms. I think every day up until today we were tracking storms over in that area, but they're a good example of the pop-up storms not having a big impact. They have some serious water issues over there, don't they?
Yeah. And, honestly, guys, when I made the 1,000-mile trek to North Carolina, I really expected there to be a lot more rain. I'm a little bit disappointed, I won't lie, because, Oklahoma, it's just dry and hot, and they've gotten more rain than us in the last couple of months. But especially in Raleigh, and what I've noticed here in North Carolina, I didn't know that you guys kind of have the same soil setup as like in Oklahoma. You guys have quite a bit of red clay here as well. And so that's kind of the biggest issue in Oklahoma is, we do get those summertime storms, but we also have red clay. And so when we go a while, with that drought, that red clay gets really dense, especially when you have just buckets of water dropping on it in a short period of time. And so, like Alex was saying, that really kind of drives that runoff. And so I think it's really interesting to kind of literally go deeper than the surface and see what is causing, us to not get out of this drought. And it just goes down to the soil.
Yeah, and if you're in the Raleigh area watching us, you're familiar with Falls Lake. That's their main water source. Boy, Alex, I don't know if you've seen some of the aerials from over there. It's scary how low that reservoir is.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be seeing that much shoreline on one of those very, very popular reservoirs. And we're seeing a lot more shoreline and not as much water. And, that does two things. One, you can't have fun out on the reservoir as you used to. That's also a source of water. And then you can't make power off of it because the lake levels are so low.
Yeah, that's such a good point. You'll hear Duke Power say that a lot. Like, conserving electricity is also conserving water, and people don't realize that. But let's talk about Raleigh. They did a story today because they went to level 2 water restrictions, and they're actually really concerned because they've had voluntary restrictions, and nobody's been really abiding by it. So I think they're going to start forcing their hand, and let's hear from what they're talking about up in Raleigh with level 2 water restrictions now in effect.
This video from our 2008 archives shows a glimpse into the historic drought that forced residents to mind their water usage.
It was a crisis period.
Councilman Mitchell Silver was in Raleigh during that time and says now the public is not aware of how quickly water levels are dropping, noting how water consumption is a serious threat to the city's remaining water supply.
I want to make sure sooner rather than later that we're now in a sense of urgency because behavior has not changed.
Some Raleigh residents who were living in the city back in 2008 say this current drought is no better than back then.
This is probably the worst drought area that I've ever been involved in or know of.
And it's causing them to think of their water habits differently this time around.
Whatever we have to do, we're just going to do it because we believe in abiding by the law.
As of this week, the city has handed out more than 150 violations to residents who did not abide by current restrictions. It's a number that could grow if Raleigh went into a stage 2 water restriction, and calls for compliance go ignored.
I don't think most people are conscious of it, of this drought. They don't care.
Yeah, it's real easy to say, hey, I'm not going to listen to the government telling me to turn my water or not use my water. But at some point, it gets to the point, Alex and Rachel, where there's no water and your hand gets forced. So it's you either reduce it now or you risk the threat that the water literally gets shut off.
Yeah. Back in Oklahoma, I can't remember the last time that we had water restrictions, especially in my hometown, but I do think it's kind of interesting how differently I think it's treated here with water restrictions, especially because I feel like in Oklahoma we are always in a drought. So it is very interesting. I'd be curious to see how Oklahomans reacted to water restrictions being out there for sure.
Yeah, and solving this, Alex, would be rain, right? And I know earlier this week, I was a little more excited for the weekend. I don't know about you, but looking at some of the latest guidance, I am a little less optimistic about weekend rain chances. I don't want to say they probably are the best chances we've had in a while, but they're starting to look a lot more scattered and isolated than widespread. If one day sticks out, I think Sunday would be the day. But I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that we've been burned so many times with this setup in the drought that I don't know how much rain we're actually going to see this weekend.
Yeah, and a lot of you are like, well, stop putting those rain chances on there. It's like, well, we can only tell you what the models are telling you, and the models obviously are not doing a good job of those very, very small, fine-scale details of picking up on the fact that we're in drought, right? And so there's not a lot of moisture that's going to be readily available as it normally would be, and so unfortunately, you see those rain chances start to go down as the higher resolution models, which can pick up on those differences, start to pick up on them.
Yeah, the hope was we had almost like a weak summer cold front. I don't want to get too excited. It does get a little cooler. I think that's the one thing I'm a little more confident in is we're going to at least see temperatures take a little bit of a dip. And I will emphasize this is all relative to the heat we've had. It's a little cooler. It's still going to be, like for a lot of folks, in the mid to upper 80s and pretty humid. But it is a break, and hopefully we get some widespread rain, but I really think it's going to be hit or miss, and more people will be disappointed. So I guess I want to have measured expectations here, Alex. Don't expect everyone to get a soaking rain, but if there is a chance, it's going to be probably Sunday for some of us to see the rain.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. I do think it's kind of interesting, like when you bring that up, the scattered rain, and I think events like this, especially like when we put the 50, 60%, it kind of really does drive what we were talking about earlier, that weather blindness of like your house gets some rain and then someone else doesn't get some rain, but that person, they expect to be out of the drought. So I think it's really funny how that's probably going to be the case for Saturday and Sunday as well.
Yes, the haves and the have-nots is basically how the rain has been going. And I've got us getting into the upper 70s on Sunday. Might bump that up a little bit, especially if rain changes start to trend lower.
Yeah.
But I do think there's going to be a noticeable break in humidity early next week where we could see maybe 50s into dew points, overnight lows in the mid-60s. That sounds so appetizing.
Yeah, a little bit of a northeast wind would be great. That would actually cool us down. And I think you're right. This time of year, sometimes, the sun or clouds could mean the difference in 10 degrees. So it's like, if you get some clouds, it could be comfortable. But late day Sunday might be our best chance. And, they say politics is all local. Weather is all local as well, because if you get rain at your house, you think, great, it's raining everywhere. If it doesn't rain in your house, you think you're the only one. It really is this time of year. And this is why we're always worried about a drought going into the summer, because as meteorologists, we kind of know scattered to pop-up storms don't really solve droughts. That's just not the way it is. That's why it was such a dire situation in the spring when it was dry. That's usually the wet season. That's when we should see widespread rain. And when we didn't have it then, I was like, uh-oh, going into the summer, we're probably not going to see that reverse until the fall. So we've got a ways to go before we get there. I was just showing the high-res stuff you were talking about, Alex. This is at least my glimmer of hope. This is Sunday at 4 o'clock. And again, there's still a lot of breaks there, but that's probably the most widespread rain chances that we have in our short-range guidance right now is late Sunday, Monday.
Yeah, and you really need a widespread lifting mechanism such as a front. Pop-up showers and storms don't do it. Terrain can lift and create some of those isolated showers and storms, but you need that air to be lifted on a widespread scale, and a front does that. And so that's why we'll see the better chance of some of those scattered showers and storms. Those could pack a punch. There is the marginal risk as we go through the weekend as well. For a strong storm or two producing up to 60-mile-an-hour damaging winds. So keep that in mind. We have definitely seen a lot of damaging wind reports over the last several days.
Yeah, that's one thing that intense heat and humidity will do. If you can get an updraft going, boy, you can get some pretty good downburst out of this, and we have seen that quite a bit. Speaking of severe weather, it's not local, and I was utterly fascinated by this, and thanks to Rachel for finding the video as well. But this happened earlier this week, and I know, Alex, you saw this as well. This big tornado that touched down in China. And I will tell you this, and a lot of people out there don't understand, the U.S. is the tornado capital of the world, right? We get more tornadoes here in the U.S. than the rest of the world combined. So when there's big tornadoes in other countries, it's a pretty rare event. But this one, Alex, the video is insane because this was a big tornado that went through a very densely populated part of China. Look at some of these aerials. And what was interesting, and Rachel can chime in on this, they don't really use the EF scale like we do in the U.S., which makes sense because ours is based on our building codes. But they kind of do, Rachel. Can you explain like the difference? Like they kind of use it, but they don't.
Yeah, so it's literally the phrasing that you just said. They kind of use it, but they don't. It's unofficially official. And so the enhanced Vegeta scale, the EF scale, is based off of American infrastructure. And so whenever we go in, when the NWS goes in and surveys a tornado, they take 28 different damage indicators. So that's different types of buildings, a mobile home, a well-built house, things like that. And they kind of rate the damage that's done on those damage indicators. Well, in China, the way the buildings are built are very different than the way that buildings are built in American infrastructure. So it's very hard to kind of get that idea of what a tornado has really done in an area. So I know with this tornado, it saw winds of up to 260 kilometers or 130 miles per hour. So it only peaks at an EF2 here. They can't really max it out of an EF2 because that's the max winds you can see for an EF2. So it is really interesting to see how exactly they rate things because of how differently things are built. And that's kind of the controversy with how things are rated now. And I'm sure you guys have heard about the EF scale kind of being revised because of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because natural disasters in China, you don't typically think like tornadoes. And so their structures are probably not like reinforced concrete walls and things like that. And, you know, that we would have building codes, or that maybe Oklahoma especially would have building codes geared towards extremely strong winds like that. So if that's an EF2, that damage looks like something an EF3 or an EF4 would produce here in the United States. And it's just because those building codes are different. I guess we'll have to get Mr. Shepard out there, Tim Marshall, the engineer extraordinaire, to share some info with them.
Yeah, I wonder if he is going to travel over there, because I guess one thing they could do is, as Rachel mentioned, is just use the wind speed equivalent and try to relate it. But I think people are shocked in the United States the way we rate tornadoes. That's why I'm not a big fan of beforehand. People will say, oh, that's an EF3. Looking at you don't really know until you look at the damage. It's really a post-assessment. And I think it's been a big adjustment to see, hey, we've got damage indicators. We know this structure takes this amount of force to break, so we know that this is what happened. But as Rachel alluded to, with Doppler on wheels now and all these measurement tools, drones, I mean, you guys have seen the chase videos, it's crazy. We're getting direct measurements now, so there's a big clamor, especially among the storm chaser community. Let's use the real-time data to classify these tornadoes, because if we're getting wind speeds from within the tornado, the problem with that is, as you guys know, not all tornadoes are sampled that way, so we got to come up with some kind of normalization tool that allows us to classify all tornadoes, whether there's a drone, a Doppler on wheels, or just a structure in the path.
And that's why I think it's still better, and, you know, Rachel, you can chime in on this, like, especially being in Oklahoma where you get a lot of tornadoes, you know, the building codes and things like that, it's probably still better to go by degree of damage to these structures that we know can take an X amount of wind speed or wind damage and withstand that or fail depending on that, instead of trying to take on, you know, putting drones into tornadoes to get instantaneous measurements.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting, like you said, the building codes and even just, you know, kind of the communities nationally, not just internationally, are so different. Because in Oklahoma, like you said, a lot of buildings are out of concrete. A lot of homes are out of concrete. My own home is built out of concrete for that reason. I know a lot of storm shelters, they're now built above ground, but kind of built into the home. So you don't have to lose some of that lead time going outdoors and things like that for Oklahoma. So it is very interesting how even just state by state, things are taken a lot differently. So.
Yeah, and some of the wild stories coming out of that China tornado, there was a man that was pulled off an 11th story balcony or building. I mean, it's just crazy. And it also dispels a huge myth here in the United States that people think tornadoes don't hit cities or populated areas. It's just luck, guys. I mean, cities are small dots on a map. It's just a matter of time before a large tornado hits a metro. There's just more areas for it to miss the metros than there are hit, so it's really a target kind of set up as well. So a crazy video. We're out of time today, guys. We'll see you back here tomorrow. I'm sure we'll be tracking some storms. Hopefully our rain chances go up for the weekend. Fingers crossed. My lawn desperately would love to see some rain coming up this weekend.